Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another Live with Kevin. Unfortunately, my guest is not here with us right now. I'm hoping that she's well. So what we're going to do is postpone today and come back when Laura Sicola can join me, and we're going to talk about her book, Speaking to Influence, but we're not going to do it today. We will reconnect with her and we will reset that up. But I do want to let you know that I'll be on 26 hours from right now, 2 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow, with another episode called Love as a Change Strategy. But now Laura is here, so I'm going to bring her up. We have not had any chance to chat ahead, but here she is. So we will not wait. We will do it right now. Good day, Miss Laura.
Good day, Kevin. I am so sorry for the tech snafu that got me a few minutes late here, but I am very excited for the conversation if you are still willing to have me.
Well, of course I'm willing to have you. And what I'm going to do, Laura, I'm going to put you back in the green room so you don't have to, while I do the little open here, I'll bring you right back up in a minute or two, okay?
Absolutely.
All right. So ignore everything else I said. Laura is here, and we will get started with her in just a second. But before we do that, since you're here, I want to make sure that you're engaged and involved in this conversation. And the best way for you to do that is to go into the comment section of whatever social platform you're on and say hello. Tell us where you're located. If you'll do that, you will be more engaged. I'll know where you're located. You'll put a smile on my face. Everybody wins. And seriously, when you do that, it does get you set up to keep asking questions, sharing your comments, and sharing ideas, which is exactly what you would do if we were around a table, right? If my guest and I and you were around a table, if you had a question, a comment, or an idea, you would share it or offer it, right? So why not do it here? Because while we're virtual, through the magic of technology, we can make all of those things happen. So if you have ideas, share them, and we'd love to hear them. If you have questions, share them as well. And so, since this will eventually be an episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast, which you see up over my shoulder, excuse me, I'm going to do the breakdown now, or the cutoff for that, and then we will get started. For those of you that are here live or later, we're so glad you're here. Marissa, this is for you in 3, 2, 1. As leaders, we are in the influence business. And one of the ways we are more or less influential is through our communication. Whether we are speaking in a one-on-one or in one of several one-to-many settings, in person or virtually, we find ourselves speaking, and that plays a huge role in our ability to be influential and therefore to lead. Join us today as we talk about mastering our leadership and influence voice. Welcome to another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast, where we are helping leaders grow personally and professionally to lead more effectively and make a bigger positive difference for their teams, organizations, and the world. If you are listening to this podcast in the future, you could join us live on your favorite social platform. You can find out when we're going live and get access to those live episodes, interact with us, and get the information sooner by joining our Facebook or LinkedIn groups, 2 of the places where these are live streamed. Just go to remarkablepodcast.com/Facebook or remarkablepodcast.com/LinkedIn, and you get all of the scoop, all of the inside stuff, and find out when we're going to be live. If you like what you're hearing today and want to learn more about developing your leaders in your organization, let's talk. Reach out to us at info@kevinikenberry.com. We'll schedule a time to learn more about your needs and share how we might be able to help. With that, I'm going to bring in my guest. Here she is. Her name is Laura Sicola. She is an executive communication coach, a 3-time TEDx speaker, and the author of Speaking to Influence, Mastering Your Leadership Voice. She has over 2 decades of experience in helping professionals employ her proprietary vocal executive presence framework, which we're going to talk about today. She is a cognitive linguist. Let me do that again, everybody. She's a cognitive linguist by training and a former faculty member at the University of Pennsylvania. She combines neuroscience, business strategy, and communication psychology to help leaders go from being the brains behind the vision to the face and voice in front of it. Her TEDx talk has nearly 7 million views, and her client list includes Amazon, Intel, HP, Kaiser Permanente, and the U.S. Department of U.S. Department of Commerce. And today, she's our guest. Laura, welcome. So glad to have you.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I'm so glad to be here.
It is a pleasure. So I'm glad you're here, and I want to start by asking you to share what you would say the big idea of the book is, because that's where we're going to frame our conversation today. So from your perspective, what's the big idea of the book?
The big idea of the book is that we tend to get stuck hearing no a lot more than we want to and a lot more than we need to, because we don't realize how much we can adapt the way that we communicate to still be ourselves, still be authentic, but get through to other people, learning to speak their language and really finding our own true, unique, and authentic sound of leadership, finding that leadership voice in a way that is still flexible and effective.
So when I first got the book, my first thought was, this is a book about public speaking, which it is, but it's not only about that.
Right.
We're going to get to that in a little bit in a second.
Mhm.
From your perspective, what makes this book and your work different from the 100 other books people could pick up about leadership communication?
From what I have seen out there on communication, to use your preface in many ways, is the fact that it's not contextual in nature. It's not about, in meetings, here's how you're supposed to talk, here's how executives talk, or here's how investors talk. It's not just about a business pitch and trying to get investment funding. It's not a presentation skills book or a book on public speaking. Yes, we do certainly address all of those contexts in different ways. And for that matter, personal. I mean, there are anecdotes in the book that are about my husband. There are anecdotes in the book that are talking about my kids and when they were teenagers and even a baby at that point. So but it's about recognizing the tools that we all have at our disposal to hear yes more often.
Hearing yes more often, something I think all of us would like to be able to say is true, which comes back to the key word in our title, and what I've already mentioned is that word influence, and of course it's the key word in the title of the book as well.
Mhm.
So from your perspective, and maybe you've just given the answer, but from your perspective, what is influence, and why does it matter to us as leaders?
Influence is very simply the ability to have an impact on something. And we can make it as big or as small as you want, but it is in the positive sense is what, of course, we're looking for. Any tool, from the internet to a hammer to whatever, can be used to build or to destroy. So any tool can, in the wrong hands, can be used for evil. So what we're not talking about influence in the sense of manipulation. That's a really important point of distinction, that this is not what we're aiming to do. It's helping get more positive progress moving along. So it's all about small details, small changes that have huge impact, huge difference on what we want. So the influence that we want to have is you're the leader of your department, your vision. And frankly, you don't have to be a leader in any literal sense to find this book valuable, because you want to convince someone of something, you want to lead them in that direction. That's all.
When because I have the chance, not just for what I do for myself, but what I do for the show, which is to read a lot of books. And typically when I am reading a book, I'm thinking, like, what's the one thing that I will remember from this book? Or and I think it's a big part of your work. So I really want to focus on this idea of what you call vocal executive presence. So give
Mhm.
us context for that, because I want to use that as the jumping off point for a lot of the rest of our conversation. As you said, lots of different contexts, and you don't have to be an executive for this to matter.
Mhm.
But I'm going to guess all of you that are here, in fact, I'm pretty confident that all of you are here, are either leaders by title, capital L leaders, or you
Mhm.
are small L leaders, which is where you are in the rest of your life when you are leading without position. So don't get lost in her word executive. But given that, Laura, let's talk about what you mean by vocal executive presence.
Sure, happy to. Very simply, it is the 3 C's. Mastering the 3 C's and the ability to command the room, connect with the audience, and close the deal. Those are the 3 C's of vocal executive presence. And very simply, what each of them means is A, command the room. Whether you click join meeting or you walk into a room or you walk into a stage or you sit down for that matter, there's something in the way that you carry yourself. There's something in the way that your body language, your voice, even regardless of what your words are, that compels people to pay attention. It holds their attention. That captivates. That's commanding the room. And I hear people make excuses all the time. Things like, "Well, I'm young. I'm the only woman in the room. I'm this ethnic background. I'm small. I'm petite. Look, I can wear high heels. No one can tell. It doesn't matter." So size is
Certainly
not
not on video. Like we
not
can't.
on video.
No
Fortunately,
one
I
knows
look
how
just
tall
as
you
tall.
are, how short you are, how petite you are.
And
Really?
yet I show up to do speeches or to do live trainings, and the first thing I inevitably see is people's face, and they kind of like look up and down, and I'm going, "You thought I was taller, didn't you?" And they're like, "Well, yeah, kinda." It's oh well. So command the room. It can't matter anything about your physique or how you physically show up. It's how you stand, your presence there. That's command the room. Number 2, connect with the audience. No matter what your backgrounds are, how different you are on one level, you need to identify where you understand me and I understand you. That's how we're going to connect with the audience. And that's the trajectory that we're going to take moving forward together. And then closing the deal is not necessarily a sales term. It can be if that's your role, business development of some sort. But really, it's about just getting to yes, coming to a mutual agreement about something, coming to an answer, moving the needle forward. I don't know about you, Kevin, but for my business, I mean, new business development, it could be 6 to 12 months worth of conversations. So closing the deal in any conversation may just be about agreeing on who I need to talk to next.
Yeah. And when I talk with leaders about the kinds of things we're talking about today, Laura, one of the things that I find folks aren't generally even thinking about is this last part, this closing the deal part. Like I say, like what's the most desired response? What do I want? What's the response that I want from them as a result of this conversation or this presentation or whatever it is? And it's the idea of closing the deal. And I love that you started with it. You're using sales language, and I don't even think that we should be sorry to use that language, right? Because if influence at some level is about getting to yes, what is the yes we want? And making sure that in our communication, we're leading toward that thing, right? It's super important.
Absolutely.
What else
And
do you
we're
want?
all in sales in some way, shape, or form because it's all about convincing. And it's not smarmy used car salesman kind of trying to convince people to buy something that they don't really want. That's not what we're talking about. Again, it's the positive. You have an important idea. You believe it's in people's best interest. You want them to understand it and welcome it.
One of the things that I think is important for us to talk about at this point is the idea of credibility. So where does credibility fit into this? I mean, because it's connected to all 3 of your other C's.
Absolutely.
Command the room, connect with the audience, and close the deal. Where does credibility fit in this? And what's your advice to those who are listening about how to build their credibility?
In addition to having enough technical chops to be able to sound like you know what you're talking about from the content perspective, credibility is an image. Leadership is an image. Just like I need to be able to step up in a way that you can sense that, okay, I believe that she is confident. I believe that she is clear in her ideas and that this is something I should pay attention to. I can tell you I'm confident, but I can tell you I'm empathetic. I can tell you I'm, whatever else. And what are you going to do? You're going to go, yeah, I'll be the judge of that one. Right.
Yeah, like let me be honest. Like, what were you before that?
Right. Right. Exactly. Exactly. So credibility is an image that first and foremost is about whether or not you are congruent when you speak. And when I say congruent, what I mean is whether or not you are in alignment with what you say and how you say it. Your words, your voice, and your body language are three different channels of speech, channels of communication that you are going to use all at the same time. And when they're all in alignment, that's when you come across as being much more congruent and much more confident to someone else, much more credible. If I said to you, "Oh, hi, yeah, I'm glad to be here today, and thanks for the invitation. Looking forward to talking about my book again." Yeah, you're gonna go, what? Like, I hear the words coming out of her mouth, but I don't understand, like, something, I don't believe any of it, right?
Yeah,
Because I'm out of alignment. I'm not congruent. That's where
exactly.
credibility falls away.
And you just highlighted, of course, not most people over time will not be watching, but only hearing. And so
Right.
you got two of the three channels that you just mentioned. You said what we say, how we say it, how we look,
Mhm.
or in the book you also talk about it as verbal, vocal, and
And visual.
visual. So let's talk about. I actually in verbal. Um, One of the things I love the way you said it because I talk to people about this all the time. I often say that when people are giving a presentation that they're trying to give a book report.
Mm,
You talk about the idea of relevant versus essential information, which I
yes.
love talking about it that way. So I mean I really love that. So let's talk about that. Help people think about that because oftentimes you are the communicator because you have the technical knowledge
Yes.
because you know the stuff, and if you don't you think you're supposed to.
Yes.
So let's talk about this and how do you help people or how can people separate the two, the relevant from versus the essential.
So, relevant information, very simply, is all the stuff that's already in your head that helps influence your decisions and your evaluations, assessments, etc. But it's all obvious to you. You have what I like to call the expert's curse. You're too smart. You have too much experience in this space. You love all of your spreadsheets and all the data points and all the details and all the specs and all those. The person you're presenting to, A, doesn't need to know all that stuff, doesn't already know it, isn't going to understand all of it anytime soon, and they're not interested. They have another objective. And they are coming to you for information because they need you to help them achieve their objective. So, in thinking, the shift is the essential information is not everything you know about that particular topic. That's relevant information. What's essential are the couple of pieces that you're going to cherry pick and say, based on what I know of that person, what they are going to do or what they will be expected to do with whatever I share with them, they need to do X. All right, so what's the 5% of information that I now know and can help them with that will be immediately necessary to help them do their job better as soon as they leave? That's
Well,
essential information.
yeah, notice everybody that Laura is shifting you from thinking about what you know to what they need. So it's this idea, it's not just of connecting with the audience, which we talked about, but it's also like being focused on the audience. It's not about you and it's not about your information. It's about what they need, which will help you close the deal, if you want to think about it that way. So anything else you want to say? There's plenty. I know we could do the whole rest of our conversation on this, but is there anything else specifically that you want to say about the verbal piece of this, the words themselves?
Yes, the one of the most frequent pitfalls that I see people falling into is the feeling of, well, okay, yes, I love my content. This is what they're thinking as they're presenting. And they're trying to prevent any questions or any objections or anything that might not make them look and feel smart. And so they speak with the fire hose method, meaning open mouth, turn on fire hose, drown audience in every kind of detail, fact point possible, and then are surprised when the audience doesn't say, "Thank you, that was wonderful." So but they're trying to it's the CYA method, if you're familiar with that acronym, cover your assets and make sure that you try to sound smart. So you give all the detail, lots of acronyms and jargon, and hope that I've just snowed everybody enough that there's nothing left for them to ask about, that I'm
Yeah.
safe. And that's not effective. That just
It
glazes
is
people over.
absolutely not effective. I would say if you're in a presentation and someone says to you, I have a lot of information to cover, so I better get started, it's not going to go well. Like, it's just not. Like,
No.
this is going to be a snooze fest, right?
Yes.
Because the synonyms for cover are bury, hide, and obscure. Just say it. Verbal, vocal. One of the things you talk about here is what you call the vocal fry.
Mm.
What do you mean by, again, great language to describe something that I think most of us have experienced, but talk about what this is and how do we move past it?
Vocal fry technically is simply not having enough breath support when you're speaking, but the way it manifests, if you, as opposed to listening to how my normal speaking voice is coming through now, if I were to have kind of this creaky, croaky, gravelly sound, and a lot of people will talk that way, and it might be just because they're slouching and in their chair, or maybe they started okay, but then they kind of trail off at the end of their sentences because they haven't finished making that point, but their brain's already moving on to part two. Or maybe it's just that you're throwing yourself under the bus and basically telegraphing how utterly unconfident you are. And you're going, oh, I have to tell you this, but I'm afraid you're not going to like it. So I'm just going to let it fall out of my mouth. What does it not say? It does not say confident. It does not say credible. It does not say authoritative. It does not say leader.
It does not. That's right. So we've talked about the verbal. We've talked about the vocal a little
Mhm.
bit. Again, lots more we could talk
Sure.
about both. But we need to talk about the visual. That's the third piece. And so when you talk about the visual, I don't think we can have the conversation about visual. And I know that this isn't only about speaking to groups, and
Mhm.
yet that's one of the things we do as a leader.
Sure.
So tell us what your thoughts are about PowerPoint. Like, what should we be doing with PowerPoint? Well, I can tell you it's what most people aren't doing. But anyway, what should we be doing? What give us some thoughts on PowerPoint and how it relates to our vocal executive presence.
If people remember only one thing from this whole conversation, Kevin, please let it be this with regard to PowerPoint. If you have to preface a slide with, you probably can't see this, but
Don't show the slide.
thank you. That's what I call an ego slide. That's for the presenter's purpose only. It means I have to shove all that data on there because I'm afraid somebody might ask a question that I don't want to answer. So I'll just give them everything here. No one can see it except me. But okay, no, that's an ego slide. Get rid of it. You just told people, oh, I'm not going to be able to see this. Okay, I'll multitask. I will check my phone because it's going to be more interesting than whatever you're about to tell me since I can't see it anyway. And by the way, Kevin, the 2020 whatever Oxford English Dictionary, I'm pretty sure their new definition of multitasking is paying attention to everything except you.
Unfortunately, we see it at dinner in every restaurant in
Yes,
America when you're supposed to be really focused on the other person, and instead you're focused on your screen. Um,
whole other show.
if you have, it is, except if you have really vocal executive presence, that will happen less often, in
Yes.
my view. Um, one of the things that Laura, at least in my interaction with you now, but certainly in reading the book, that I've found is that you've taken principles and given them words that are very, very helpful. And so I've done this in the other two. I'll do it here. To
Okay.
here, I want you to talk about the 60 to 60 rule.
Sure. And this is one of my favorite.
Super, super important.
Yes, this is great for the beginning of any meeting or a presentation of sorts. But the idea is that in the first 60 seconds, you will set the audience's expectations for the value you're going to bring to the next 60 minutes. Plain and simple. Why is this important to remember? Because most people really, they put all their prep into their big content slides or their big points that they want to make. They don't think about how they open. Oh, well, I'll just welcome people and maybe go through an agenda or something. And so they stumble, bumble, fumble their way through everything and then eventually get into a groove. Well, what is setting the audience's expectation? The stumble, bumble, fumble stuff. And they're going, oh, this is going to be a long meeting. That's not a good way to get them to look forward to paying more attention to everything else that you want to share. You just cued them in, multitask now.
And Kara is reminding us, and I agree with her, that multitasking does not exist. She says it's distracted tasking. I would say it's switch tasking. But the regardless is that if people are switching, they're not with you, and you want them with you. If you're saying something that you want them to know and understand, they can't get there if they're not listening. So, Kara, thank you for that. The thing I would add to what you just said, which is
Please.
incredibly important, is that the where people focus their practice or their prep to the degree they do it is on the middle, when the most important parts of the presentation, even if it's just one-to-one, is the beginning and the end. And
Yes.
so what we do in that first 60 seconds, what we do in that first 90 seconds is so important because, as you said, it sets the table for everything else. And it isn't just what we say, but how we show up, how we look, the visual component of that.
Yes.
Super, super important. So we've talked about all of these pieces. And there's obviously plenty more we could talk about. We're talking with Dr. Laura Sicola about her book, Speaking to Influence, Mastering Your Leadership Voice. Is there anything I didn't ask? I have a couple more questions for you, but is there anything else anything I didn't ask that you thought I would or hoped I would ask?
I think one point that I would love to have a chance to insert in here is the concept of the prismatic voice, which I believe we addressed or relatively somewhere in the middle of the book. But the prismatic voice is where so people get stuck about the idea of learning to expand your speaking style because they think, well, I got to be me. I want to be authentic, so I can't change because I'll be changing who I am. No, you're not changing who you are. The whole idea is to be able to adapt your speech in a way that is context appropriate, but still you. And I use the word prismatic voice because, the same way you've seen those little crystals or sun catchers hanging from the kitchen window or the rear view mirror, and the sun hits it and the little rainbow comes out the other side. Well, in that, we are all white light. And by the way, I'm a Jersey Italian. I don't do woo woo. So just go with the go with the analogy for a second. Humor me on this one. So, but we've all got that. We are white light. Okay, I'm Laura. You're Kevin. But we have all those colors in our spectrum. So I'm here in my coach, in my trainer, in my podcaster mode. We'll call this my purple. But I also have a 9-year-old at home. And it may not surprise you to know I don't talk like this to him. My mommy voice is different. There's happy mommy, there's not so happy mommy. But either way, we'll call that my yellow or my green. Okay. It's not that one of these is the real me and one of these is the fake me. It's that I know in this context, I need to turn down my yellow a little bit and turn up my purple. Whereas with him, I'm going to turn down the purple and turn up the yellow or the green. That's okay. And anybody who says, no, I don't do that, bull. Because if you got grandparents, you talk to them a certain way that I guarantee is different from if you're hanging out with your friends watching a football game. And the number of 4-letter words that probably slide out of your mouth when the ref makes a bad call against your team. We all adjust those. We've all got our different colors.
Yeah, it's as simple as this, that we are more than our voice. Our voice is a part of who we are, and how it's just about how we can express so that we can get to more yeses,
Yes.
given the context, given the audience, and given
Yes.
those things. So just a couple of more things
Please.
before we go. I'm curious, Laura, what you do for fun.
Oh, for fun. I love to cook. I can't garden, have a total black thumb, kill plants. I think that's why God made me a good cook, because plants were going to die in my hands anyway, so they should give their lives for a good cause.
There
But
you go.
I love
That's
to
not the first
experiment.
time you've said that. I'm here to tell you.
Nope.
That's not the first time you've said that. Now, the other thing, usually if I have the chance to talk to someone ahead, I prep this question, but I'm going to
Okay.
ask it anyway
Go for it.
because it's a useful question. That's a question I ask everyone that I have on the show. And so I'm curious what you're reading, or what's something you've read recently that you might share with us.
Something I have read recently. Let's see. So I just finished my master practitioner certification in neurolinguistic programming, which is a fascinating look at how language and the brain uh, hold us back and propel us forward when you learn different ways to unlock it. So I recently read Dr. Matt James's book on mental and emotional release, which is part of neurolinguistic programming, or NLP as it's better known, and just really insightful into where we come up with stuff and how to release baggage and let it go. And so it's been really useful for my coaching as well.
We will have that in the show notes. And we will also have, obviously, a link to Laura's book, Speaking to Influence. But the question you've been wanting me to ask from the beginning is, how can we learn more? Where do you want to point people? Where can people learn more, get to know you, find out more, etc.?
Thank you, Kevin. I would love to hear from anyone who's on the call or tuning into the podcast later. We can, by all means, check out my website, which is simply laurasicola.com. Lots of information there, including links to the book and including all sorts of other interviews and whatnot.
Perfect. LauraSicola.com, SICOLA.com. So now a question for all of you before we say goodbye. The question that I have for you is the same one that I ask in every episode because it's an important question. And that is, now what? What ideas did you get today that you will apply? The questions, or the ideas are fine, but the question of application is the thing that matters the most. So if you've got insights and ideas today, great. How are you going to turn those into doing something different? Whether that's preparing more for the beginning of how you're going to introduce your next conversation or your next presentation, whatever that might be. What are you going to do to implement that? Because until you implement something new, this was not much more than entertainment. And while we hope it was entertaining, that wasn't really our purpose. So I want to thank all of you for being here. Laura, thank you for being here. It was a pleasure to have you. And before we go, everyone, just remember this. If you enjoyed this, got value from this, have an action you're going to take from this, then you want to make sure you come back next week. Make sure that you invite someone else to join you next week when we're back for another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast.
Thank you, Kevin.